Is this the moment American democracy finally broke? A couple of executive orders that Donald Trump signed yesterday. One was the demand that the Department of Justice open a criminal investigation into Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor. Chris Krebs used to be the director, the number one guy at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency of the federal government, CISA, C-I-S-A. And his job was to oversee the integrity of our elections. And in 2020, he came out and publicly said, as an official in the Trump administration, that there was no evidence of any meaningful fraud, or crimes committed or theft or whatever in the 2020 election. For that, Trump fired him, but now he wants him prosecuted for telling the damn truth. Miles Taylor is the guy who, when he was working in the Trump administration, he was the chief of staff at the Department of Homeland Security, published a piece in the New York Times under the title Anonymous, saying that some of us are trying to fight back against the Trump agenda. He broke no laws. He revealed no, secret information. He committed no libel. If he had done any of the above, he would already be in jail or would be being prosecuted for libel. But he dared to publish a book after he left office pointing out what an incompetent bumbleblank Donald Trump is. And so Trump wants him prosecuted by Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice. Now, back 1,000 years ago or more, well, I'm not sure exactly when it was, but the British government had this thing called bills of attainder. And a bill of attainder is where the legislature passes a law that says specifically Joe Blow, or in this case Thomas More, must go to prison or must be executed. No trial, no due process, no legal process. But here's what's interesting about bills of attainder. Two things. First off, this was one of the main things that the founders of our republic objected to, and it's why it's written into our Constitution. Congress shall pass no bills of attainder. But secondly, the kings of England did not have this power. Henry VIII wanted to go after a bunch of people. He had to beg the Parliament to do it. Bills of attainder could only be passed by Parliament. Well, here in the United States, they can't be passed by Congress because the Constitution specifically outlaws it. So the last time Trump ordered a prosecution of somebody, it went to court, and one of the judges asked the attorney for the Trump administration, and this case hasn't been resolved yet, is this not a bill of attainder? Is this not the equivalent? Donald Trump saying this, and the person said, yeah, but bills of attainder are specifically prohibited by the Article 1 of the Constitution, which speaks to the powers of Congress, and there's no mention of them in Article 2, which speaks to the powers of the executive branch of the president. And therefore, it's not illegal, even though you could call it a bill of attainder, which is just nuts. But so number one, this is a massive overreach. I mean, I'm just astonished, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, why this didn't lead every news story for the last 18 hours since Trump did this yesterday afternoon. Why has this not been the top story? Why was this not the top screaming headline in the New York Times? This is turning America into a police state. When the king or the leader or the president can simply identify some individual and say, go after this person. I mean, Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor are now going to have to hire an attorney, which becomes very problematic because the other thing that Trump did yesterday, he signed another executive order going after Sussman Godfrey, which is a big law firm. And he was bragging about how law firms have now promised him hundreds of millions of dollars in free legal services for his favorite causes. I mean, this is a clear violation of the Sixth Amendment, which guarantees your right to a trial and to defense, to legal defense. Who's going to defend Taylor and Krebs now? I mean, I'm sure they'll find somebody, but the biggest law firms in the country have just rolled over and said, oh, well, we won't do that anymore. This is so unconstitutional. This is so un-American. This is so dictator-like. I mentioned yesterday, the dictator and dictate, they share a root word. And a dictate is, a proclamation. That's what Trump is doing. He's governing by dictate. He's governing by executive order. He's issued more executive orders in the first 3 months of his administration, I believe, than any president has ever done in their entire, term. It's because he wants to be America's first dictator. And thus he's dictating these things. I mean, this politicization of the Justice Department is supposed to operate independently. We thought we learned this lesson with Richard Nixon coming up with an enemies list. But even Richard Nixon didn't say, hey, prosecute this person. This is not just about, Krebs or Taylor or the targeted law firms. It's about the survival of our democracy. When a president can wield power to punish dissent and dismantle checks and balances without consequence, that's it. That's the ball game. He can come after you or me next. None of us are safe. Not to mention, and that's just, the legal, Krebs and Taylor are now looking at the possibility of prison, and he called Taylor a traitor, said he committed treason. That you could be executed for treason. These guys are now going to have to hire some very expensive attorneys. They may lose their homes, they may lose their retirement savings, they could lose everything. They're facing going to prison. And on top of that, I'd be willing to bet just about anything that already the right-wingers over on Twitter are just foaming at the mouth, doxing these people, putting out their personal information, their spouses and families being, tormented. This is how fascists roll. I mean, this is not a man who respects the Constitution. These are the actions of a man desperate to exploit and cling to power by any means necessary. This executive order is more than just a scandal. This is a frontal assault on democracy. Trump is willing to use the machinery of the state as a weapon against truth and accountability. It underscores the urgent need to safeguard our democratic institutions, to enforce accountability, and to reaffirm the independence of the rule of law in America, something that no Republican will speak out and do. You would think that Republicans in Congress would be as freaked out about this as I am. After all, Trump could go after them next. But they all think, oh, as long as he loves us, we'll be good. Well, Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs were Republicans. They were Republicans in a Republican administration. Republicans, you damn well better wake up. Because the minute you stick your head up above the grass, the minute that you pipe up, the minute that you dare speak out, he's going to come for you too.